Welcome to our seniors event for March here at Wilmot Center. I'm Pastor Wayne, the pastor of congregational care here. And wherever you're able to watch this event from on your computer or whatever you're looking at, we trust that this will be a time of encouragement for you as well. Today we wanted to begin with the video, If Jesus Hadn't Come. We realize that in just 37 days, we will be participating in Good Friday with the services on that day, and then 2 days later, rejoicing in the resurrection of Jesus on Easter Sunday. But if Jesus had not come, there would be no manger, there would be no cross, there would be no hope. It was back in 1993. I had a telephone conversation with Reverend Jim Reese, who was then the senior pastor at Benton Street Baptist Church in Kitchener. I wanted to ask him about a song he had written. It was called Because He Came. Now you need to know that on July the 5th, 2019, Pastor Jim departed from this earth and he entered his long-anticipated home with Jesus in heaven. But back then on the telephone, he said that it was back in February of 1962 that he was traveling out west to Saskatchewan with Ken Campbell for a 7-week evangelistic tour. They made up the Campbell Reese evangelistic team. How many remember that team? I believe in 1972, I believe it was, they had a crusade over at Waterloo Oxford High School, because I was in Plattsville at that time pastoring that church, and I remember coming over here to WO for that crusade. Well, Jim said, when they left Ontario, it was 5 degrees above zero. But soon it became 20 degrees below zero as they proceeded west. He said, it was my turn to drive while Ken slept. And then he went on to say, he said, while I was driving, I began to have a pity party. Ken was fast asleep. But I got to thinking, why am I leaving my wife and family and the comforts of my home for 7 weeks? Why am I even here? But he said, Wayne, he said, just as quickly, the Lord spoke into my spirit and he said, you are here because Jesus came here. And then he said, just as quick as anything, the thoughts came to him. Jim, you're going away for 7 weeks, but Jesus left his home for 33 and a half years. Jim, you get the privilege to simply share the message of salvation on this trip, but Jesus came to become the message of salvation. And then he said the Lord gave him these words and melody as he drove the car, and as carefully as he could driving, he was quickly scrawling the words on a piece of paper beside him. He sang this song for the first time in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I wonder where I'd be today if Jesus had not come this way to bring salvation to my sin-sick soul. In Satan's net, I would be caught, and to a sinner's grave be brought. But oh, thank God it was for me he came. My life on earth is now a joy. A new song does my tongue employ. Since I've been cleansed from all my sin and shame. And when I'm caught up in the air to live with Christ forever there, I'll thank him that to earth for me he came. And the chorus goes, because he came, my heart is fully changed. Because he came, my life is rearranged. Because he came, I love him and adore. Because he came, I'll serve him evermore. Now, listen to this. In 1962, Jim was given that special song about the blessing of salvation from sin and the assurance of eternal life with Jesus after departing from this earth. In 1965, Jim and his wife, Adrienne, were given wisdom regarding a situation in their life that Jesus helped them walk through victoriously. You see, one of their children, Stephen, was born developmentally disabled, as Jim stated. He and Adrienne were seeking enrichment opportunities and support for their young son. They looked all over for a Christian organization that could provide a full spectrum of ministry for Stephen, but none could be found. So they enlisted the help of other families and created a service that could fill this need for Stephen and for others desiring the same opportunity. Do you know what the result of that was? The Ontario Christian Association for Exceptional Children was born, now known as Christian Horizons. I wonder where we would be today if Jesus had not come our way. Definitely no manger, no cross, no hope. But you're here today, and we're here today, and you are watching today because we believe Romans 15:13. May the God of all hope fill you with joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you might overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. That's why we gather in these events each month. We're so glad that we've got all these people here at Wilmot, as well as those of you that are watching online, and we just say, God bless you. Today, we are blessed to have two special people with us. They are special because we work with them. I have to say no, I know. Chris and his daughter, Kaylin. Chris Rutledge and his daughter, Kaylin, are with us today. Chris is our executive director here at Wilmot Center. He joined the staff in 2016, and they've got a lot more to tell you, but I'm going to let them tell you. Why don't you welcome with me Chris and Kaylin Rutledge.
Thank you, Pastor Wayne. It is good to see so many of you. Quick little bit about myself. As Pastor Wayne said, my name is Chris Rutledge. I'm the executive director here at Wilmot Center Church. I have a very lovely wife. Many of you will know if you get coffee on Sunday mornings. Her and my children help serve in the coffee area. She is a local person, so much so that she actually attended the school across the street back when it was actually a school, and attended the local high school that so many of our youth attend as well. Me, on the other hand, I grew up in Toronto, Brampton, Kapuskasing, Guelph, you name it, I've probably lived there at some point in my life. So we're very different in that way. We have 4 children, one being my daughter Kaylin, who is going to be leading you in song shortly, who is currently doing a worship degree at Liberty University in Virginia. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, Kaylin. And then I have 3 boys who are 17, 15, and 11. So the grocery bill is high, and I'm losing weight, so that is a good benefit. We've been in ministry for 21 years now. I started 21 years ago at Emmanuel Bible College in the admissions department there. After being a student there, my wife was also a student there, kind of typical of Bible colleges I know. And then we moved up to the mighty city of Paisley, Ontario. How many people have been to Paisley? All right, okay, I should say, how many people have been through Paisley? Because you got to go through Paisley to get to the beach. If you love snow, move to Paisley. It begins in October and it stops in April if you're lucky. But we moved up to Paisley to actually join with Christian Horizons and run and manage their conference center up there. So hearing Pastor Wayne talk of Jim Reese and his son Stephen, very fond memories of that family and our time in Paisley. For our last 5 years in Paisley, we actually owned and operated the conference center as a Christian retreat center for churches and for adults with developmental disabilities. And then just about 9 years ago, I got the calling to come back home, as my wife would say, back to heaven, back here. It was amazing. One morning, I wasn't looking at moving. We owned the conference center. One morning, I saw an opportunity at Wilmot Center Church, and I thought, well, that would be, that's intriguing. I don't remember why I saw it or how it came across my desk, but I thought, well, that'd be I'd be interested in doing that. But then I pushed it off to the side and went on with my day. The next day, I saw my in-laws, and my mother-in-law walked up to me with a job description and said, I feel like you should apply for this job. I said, okay, I guess we know what we got to do next. So that's kind of where we are. I'm going to be entering my 10th year here at Wilmot, and it is so great to know so many of you and to see you each week. And for those that I don't know, I hope to get to know you a little bit more. So that's a little bit about us. I'm going to throw it over to Kaylin. She's going to lead us in some worship songs. Some you'll be very familiar with. Some are a little bit newer, but hopefully you've heard them. So I invite you, if you want to stand and worship, you can. If you want to sit, whatever you are most comfortable with. But Kaylin, please lead us in worship.
I will sing of the goodness 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Twas grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Than when we first begun. A thousand generations falling down in worship to sing the song of ages to the Lamb. And all who've gone before us, and all who will believe, will sing the song of ages to the Lamb. Your name is the highest, your name is the greatest, your name stands above them all. All thrones and dominions, all powers and positions, your name stands above them all. And the angels cry, holy, all creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. And if you've been forgiven, and if you've been redeemed, sing the song forever to the Lamb. And if you walk in freedom, and if you bear His name, sing the song forever to the Lamb. We'll sing the song forever and amen. And the angels cry, holy, all creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. Hear your people sing, holy to the King of Kings, holy, you will always be, holy, holy forever. You will always be holy, holy forever.
Oh, amen. Amen. Thank you all for singing. Thank you, Kaylin, for leading us. As a proud father, I'd have to say you're in the right degree. So thank you, Kaylin. Really appreciate it. I will admit she gets that talent from one of her parents. It is not the one you see before you. But thank you, Kaylin. This afternoon, I want to introduce you to two people. They're going to be up on the screen in just a moment. So there's 4 people on the screen, I know. The one on the far left, that is me, 22 years and a couple pounds ago. My kids looked at it and said, "Daddy, you were so skinny." I'm like, "Thanks, appreciate that." The other tall one, that's actually my brother. Many people get us mixed up, to the point that we'll actually just answer to each other's names when people ask us, because it's just easier. But the other 2 are my maternal grandparents. So on the far right, that is my grandmother. Her name is Allison Caroline Ingram. And then in the middle is my grandfather, Herbert George Ingram. My brother and I did not get our heights from our grandparents. But somewhere in that line is height, because my uncles on that side are both taller than my brother and I. And my poor grandmother had to birth them and raise them. But let me tell you a little bit about my grandmother. Grandma, or as Grandpa called her, Allie Wally Pally Gally. That was his name for her. He'd even write it on Christmas presents. I don't know how he fit it on those little sticker tags, but Allie Wally Pally Gally. She was very proper. She was sweet. She always wore a dress. I think maybe once in my life I can remember her wearing pants. She was usually found in the kitchen baking, and she loved the show Bonanza. Bet you didn't think I was going to say that. Any Bonanza fans here? Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, we won't sing the song. I think my grandmother had a crush on Little Joe. Because if she wasn't watching Bonanza, she was watching Little House on the Prairie or Highway to Heaven. Hopefully many of you remember those shows. But she loved it. She recorded every single episode on VHS. She would stay up late. It would come on at 11 o'clock at night, and she'd have her VHS ready. And if it was an episode she didn't have, she'd let the recording continue. And if she had it, she'd stop it and go on about her day. But she had hundreds of VHS tapes, all with Bonanza, all organized. If only Grandma could see it now. I've got a child, my middle son, who loves Bonanza as well, and he's got pretty well the whole DVD set, takes up about this much space on the shelf. She would have loved that. But Grandma had a small TV and a VHS player on the kitchen table, and anytime she was in the kitchen, she had Bonanza playing. So that is what my childhood memory is of her. She baked all the time. Man, could she bake. Even mincemeat pie. Anybody not like mincemeat pie? It's okay to admit you don't like it. Grandma's mincemeat pie, you'd love it. Like, it was amazing. She did not cook. It was strange. If it came in a can, that was dinner. She could bake a cake and a pie from scratch, but dinner's going to be peas from a can, fried Spam, and maybe some cheese from the fridge. But that was Grandma. So for me, I don't know if you're like me, I like the sweets more than the dinner. The dinner's like, get that out of the way, let's get to dessert. So I love that Grandma could bake. And at Christmas time, in the garage, just inside the door, there'd be stacks of those old cookie tins of cookies she'd been baking. And I'd always sneak in there, you lift it up, take out a couple, they're called snowballs. They're some kind of cookie thing rolled in coconut. I don't even know what it is, but it's delicious. And then I'd rearrange them so that Grandma wouldn't know. Grandma knew. I think she always knew there were a couple missing. I found out later one of my uncles did the same thing, so I think she obviously would notice, I'm missing a lot of these cookies. But Grandma was also a strong believer in the Lord. She sang in the choir. She was a teller. She taught Sunday school. She helped with Vacation Bible School and was involved in every single thing you could think of at church. She studied the scriptures and she prayed constantly. She played the piano very well and would often play at church on Sundays. I vividly remember when we'd be with them that during the day, she'd always take a break from whatever chore she was doing, whatever task she had on the go, and she would sit down at the piano and just play and sing. Even as a teenager, whatever I was up to or whatever I was doing, I would just stop and listen to just how pure the music came out. She just loved to sing and play. Then there was Grandpa. Herbert George Ingram, Herbie if you really knew him, but he went by George. I don't blame him. Grandpa was hilarious. He was adventurous. He was intelligent. He usually wore cargo pants and a Tilly hat. Like that was formal attire for Grandpa. He loved to garden. It was his pride and joy, and you could always find him out there tending his garden. He was extremely generous with his time and his finances, and if he thought you needed something, whether you needed it or not, you were going to get it. And he was so excited about those things. At Christmas time, he'd be so excited to tell you what he got you for Christmas that he'd start dropping little hints. He'd be like, oh, those shoes look a little worn, wink, wink. Maybe you'll get new ones in 6 days and 3 hours or something like that. You know, he couldn't keep a secret at all. He loved putting on an Easter egg hunt for his grandchildren. He would get those big ones, hundreds of them, and spend like half a week hiding them around his house. And then we'd all go out for brunch Easter Sunday and then come back, and we'd have to wait for Grandpa to open the door, because when he opened the door, the game was on. And then you would just go looking for Easter eggs. It got to the point where he hid so many, he couldn't remember how many he hid, so he had to start having pages of notes as to where he hid all the eggs, because he would forget. But he couldn't contain himself. So as you're looking for eggs, he'd be coming up alongside you, kind of giving you a little hint. I remember one time he's like, what do you think of that clock? You think the batteries are still in it? The batteries? Take the clock off the mantle, open up the battery case, and there's an egg inside. I'm sure somebody has got something from Goodwill and opened it up years later to find an old chocolate egg just jammed in there, all moldy. You can thank my grandfather for that. But he loved putting on the Easter egg hunt and watching his grandchildren run around trying to find Easter eggs. Did I tell you we were all married at that time? If you're picturing little kids running around, we're all 20 some odd, throwing the elbows, pushing each other, trying to find the eggs, and he loved it. I think part of the reason why he did it was because it allowed him time with his grandchildren, and he just got a joy out of that. Grandpa also had a great sense of humor. You know, Pastor Wayne, kind of, as you're telling those jokes, I'm like, this reminds me of my grandfather a bit. He would tell you jokes and laugh, and then later that day, you'd go into the bathroom and you'd be like, oh, Reader's Digest, might as well read that. And you would read the exact same jokes. And you know, I was many years old when I realized Grandpa just took Reader's Digest jokes and just retold them to you. And you were like, my grandfather's the funniest man. Reader's Digest is hilarious. I vividly remember one time at our cottage, we were having dinner, and my grandfather wanted to tell us this joke. I kind of remember the joke, might not be fully appropriate, so I won't tell the joke, but he could never get to the punchline. He was so busy laughing, he got to the point where he was sitting on the floor. He's in his mid-70s, crying, trying to tell this joke that he thought was so funny. And my grandmother on the other end just sat there, shook her head, and said, oh, George. That was my grandfather. But he was also devoted to Christ. But he was quiet about it. You know, you never heard Grandpa get up and pray. He never really came out and said, hey, this is my faith. But if anything needed to be done at the church or anything needed to be funded, my grandfather was the one in the background that would make sure it got done. He wasn't going to sing out loud in church. He wouldn't even necessarily pray for grace at a family meal. He'd always ask somebody else to pray. And then he would, if you took too long praying, he always did the same thing. He'd stay there with his eyes closed at the end and then open one and say, "Is he done yet?" But that was Grandpa. But he loved the Lord in his own silent way. Two very different people, but the one thing that united them was their love for music and their love for the Lord. And one song I wanted to play for you today, I'm not going to play it myself because that wouldn't go well, but I have a video I want to show you, is one of their favorite songs called "In the Garden."
I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever He speaks, and the sound of his voice is so sweet. The birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gave to me within my heart is ringing. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share
What an amazing song, and one I know my grandparents would have just loved to hear today. My grandparents both passed away about 20 and 21 years ago, but I learned a lot from them. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I learned from my grandparents. First thing I learned, ketchup is a non-Newtonian fluid. Wow, look at all these confused faces. My daughter looked at the notes and said, "What's a non-Newtonian fluid?" I said, "Stay tuned. You're about to find out." Every meal when we ate out, and you know how good a cook Grandma was, so there was many, if there was ketchup on the table, Grandpa would tell us or ask us, "Do you know what a non-Newtonian fluid is?" Eventually, we always had to say, "No, why don't you tell us?" Even though by then we knew. He would then proceed to tell us how a non-Newtonian fluid works. For all of you that are curious, a non-Newtonian fluid is one where as its velocity increases, its viscosity decreases, thus in turn increasing its velocity, and so on and so on. Are you with me? All right, let me make this easier. The faster it gets, the thinner it gets, making it go faster. So if you've ever been trying to get ketchup and then all of a sudden you got a lot of ketchup, that's because it's a non-Newtonian fluid. And we are making it our responsibility as his grandchildren to make sure the world is aware of non-Newtonian fluids. And we even shared it at his memorial service to make sure everybody would know and that his legacy of non-Newtonian fluids would continue. And the wisdom of that would pass on through generations. That was Grandpa. And if he ever forgot, you asked, "I wonder why the ketchup doesn't come out so quick." And then you knew he was going to get into it. Another thing I learned, an 8-hour drive can take 3 days. My brother and I used to spend our summers up in Kapuskasing where they lived. We would meet them at my uncle's house in Bracebridge, and then we would start the 8-hour journey from Bracebridge to Kapuskasing, eventually arriving 3 days later. Grandma and Grandpa were never in a hurry. They loved to go to every little stop, every bookstore. Every meal took at least 2.5 hours. Got to go for a walk afterwards. They were never in a rush. They loved to explore. I think I've inherited this, as I love the journey almost as much as I love the destination. These last 2 summers, we've been able to take our kids from here to Vancouver and from here to Cape Breton. And I love the drive. The kids did ask this summer, could we not drive? So people keep asking, "What are you doing for your vacations?" I'm like, gardening, maybe. But an 8-hour drive can take 3 days, and they're going to love every moment of it. Another thing, Tim Hortons is a restaurant. Now, understand, be with me, go back 25 years to Tim Hortons. They didn't have pizza and chili and chicken sandwiches and stuff like that. Back then, they had donuts, which were actually made in the store. Shout out to Tim Hortons, you need to go back to that. Cookies, muffins, some soup, and buns. That was it. You can imagine for a teenager, a growing teenager, you need more than a bun and some soup for a meal. You need burgers, lots of them. But Grandma would always choose, let's go to Tim Hortons for the meal. And you'd pull up and somebody would have to run in and see, what is the soup of the day? And you were in the back seat just praying, "Oh, let it be cream of broccoli." Because Grandma hated cream of broccoli. If it was cream of broccoli, we're going to McDonald's or to Perkins. I wonder what Grandma would think of Tim Hortons today with all their selections, and whether she would still hate cream of broccoli soup. Oh, I learned so much from my grandparents, but most importantly, my grandparents saw value in younger generations. They actively went out of their way to ensure that the younger people felt loved and acknowledged, especially their grandchildren. They were always there to encourage, to mentor, and to teach, My grandmother was a Sunday school teacher for over 50 years. Well into her 70s, she would still get down there with her flannel graph. I think flannel graph's the greatest thing ever. And I think even here a few years ago, we had some flannel graph we were using. It's awesome. She always taught Sunday school. Grandpa would secretly help support youth when they're going on mission trips or even in their daily needs sometimes. If he heard about a need a younger person had, he found a way to meet it. They never looked down at the younger generation. I keep saying younger generation. I know sometimes we use the term next generation, but that's a term we probably need to get rid of because they're not next, they're current. They're here, they're just younger. They were totally in on doing what's called intergenerational ministry, even though that term had not been created yet. So I have a question for you. When you think of the younger generation, what do you think of? What words pop up in your head? Lazy? Spoiled? Irresponsible? Disrespectful? Any of those words? I know myself, I've got to the point where I started thinking those things. I started thinking, man, I never would have done that when I was that age. Who raised these kids? Don't they have any respect at all? But I have to have a check in my spirit and realize that God loves them just as much as he loves me. I probably wasn't as much of an angel as I think I was. How many of you were angels in your younger years, other than Pastor Wayne? You know, even this past winter, with all this snow we've had, we would have people come into the church parking lot here and do donuts. And I'd get so frustrated. I'm like, why are they here, you know? What if they hit something? How could they be so careless? And then I vividly remember doing donuts in mall parking lots, church parking lots, anywhere I could do a donut in the winter. All right, who is willing to admit they've done donuts in their car before? All right, we got some honest people here. It's fun, wasn't it? It was fun to do donuts. Who will admit they did them when they were older? Okay, a couple. I appreciate that. Sometimes we can forget we were young as well. Sometimes those days, they get farther and farther back, and we think, oh, we were so good as kids and so respectful. But we had fun, too. Now, this is not to excuse all behavior, but we have to remember we weren't perfect either. So I'm not saying every single thing kids do, you just got to ignore. But when we look at the younger generation, we need to see potential, see what they could become. We need to see the intelligence that they have. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and if not every hand goes up, I'm going to be surprised. Have you ever asked a younger person for help with technology? I'm only 46, and I already have to ask my kids, I don't know how to work this thing. There's no buttons. Like, what do you do? These kids are so intelligent these days. We have to see ourselves when we look at young people and know that was us one day. And I'm sure many people that were older than you looked at you and went, oh, these kids these days, right? And we have to look at them as a child of God because that's what they are. Titus 2 calls on older men and women to intentionally build relationships with the younger generation. Go out of your way to build relationships. So we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to teach you some young person lingo, some slang. Now remember, I was looking things up. I'm like, your generation had words too. Who here said bee's knees before? Or is that too far back? Or cool, radical. You know, we all have generational words. Now, I'm going to admit, most of these I didn't even know, but I've heard my kids say some of them. So we're going to go through a few of them, and if you think you know what it means, shout it out. So the first word is going to be drip. What does drip mean? I know some of you guys are probably thinking about your eavesdrops. I got that dripping eavesdrop. Gonna have to fix that. Anybody know what drip means to the younger generation these days? A lot of shaking. All right, well, drip means cool. It can also mean, does it have a second? I think it just means cool. So a lot of times they'll talk about your clothes. If they want to say, you got cool clothes, you got nice drip. Do I need a Kleenex? I don't know. All right, the next one. Cap. Anybody know what cap means? Wow, so yeah, I did hear someone. Well, you're younger though. Cap means to lie or false. So if someone says no cap, that means truth. Stay with me. All right, here's a fun one. Bussin'. Now, I don't think this means we all get in a bus and we go somewhere. We're going to be bussin'. Anybody know what bussin' means? All right, it means really good. Did you enjoy the cookies today? Bussin'. They were bussin'. They were really good. At Easter, you start using some of these words with your grandchildren, and I tell you, they'll be, Mom, Dad, I don't think Grandma and Grandpa is doing well. Next one is amped. Some of you might know this one. Excited. All right, you guys are hip and cool. I don't even know if those are cool words anymore, but amp means a way to express excitement. Fam. This is the next one. Fam. Family. It's how you refer to the people that are close to you. They're my fam. I don't know why you can't say illy, but they're your fam. And then fire. So I hope you're writing all these down because you're going to need them. Fire. Something that's fire. Something that's hot. Trendy, hot, or great. Man, that is fire. Flex. Anybody here like to flex? Doesn't have anything to do with muscles. Instead, if you're flexing, it means that you are showing off or bragging, not necessarily good things. Here's one. If you're into sports, you've probably heard this one. GOAT. Greatest of all time. So it's used a lot. Like, I swear every sports athlete's called a GOAT at some point, and I'm like, but there could only be one, and that's Jesus. So we should just keep referring to Jesus as the GOAT to the young people. He's the greatest of all time. Exactly. There you go. All right, here's one. Let them cook. Yeah, don't let Grandma cook. Don't let Grandma cook. Let Grandpa cook. Let them cook means to provide space for someone to do what they're good at. Focus on what they're good at. So let them cook. All right, the next one is lit. Lit. Now I got a lot of questions. They're like, I don't know. Anybody know what lit means? Something that's lit? Well, guess what? It also means cool. Who wants to just go back to using the word cool? All right, mid. Mid. Anybody got any idea what mid means? It simply refers to something that's average, maybe below average. So if your grandchildren eat your Easter Sunday meal and you're like, what'd you think? It was mid. Better work on cooking, I guess. Or don't let them say that to you. 4 more. Peeps. My peeps. It's not those little Easter candies, but it just means people. Riz. It's actually the middle of a word is what it means. Charisma. Somebody's ability to charm or attract. That person's got riz. Pastor Wayne has riz. Sus. I think they're just shortening words. Suspect, suspicious, something that is questionable. So your friend says, oh yeah, I just climbed Mount Everest in 4 hours. Oh, that's sus. I don't think you did that. And the last one, boo. I know, I'm sure we've all said that before. Boo. Anybody know what boo means? Yeah, it's actually hopefully the opposite of scary. Boo refers to one significant other. They're my boo. I'm not sure how we got there, but now you're ready to connect with the younger generation, right? You're ready to go out there and have a bussin' time, or I might have even messed that up. I don't know. So I'm not saying go out there and use all these words you've learned, because if you're like me, you'll use them wrong, and they'll just shake their head at you. But that's a little bit about their generation right now. And yeah, you guys had it too. You had your fun words that your parents probably shook their heads at and went, I don't know what they mean. I actually had an incident a few days ago with my eldest son. I was looking at the stock market, you know, with all these tariffs and the stock market's going down. I'm like, man, this is crazy. And he said, I don't believe in the stock market. I'm like, what? You don't believe in Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy, but the stock market? I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. He's like, no, believe means I don't really follow it. Like, I'm out. I can't follow this conversation. But so anytime, maybe you get an app, it'll tell you what are the younger people, what are your grandchildren actually saying. But all this to say, you know, Psalm 78:4 calls the whole people of God to tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord. It's vital for church ministry to have all generations represented and working together to use our strengths. This is called intergenerational ministry. Intergenerational churches are those that are intentional about bringing different generations together in a mutual, influential relationship so that we can achieve the common goal of winning others for Christ. Now, I'm going to tell you this from the start. This is not one-sided. This is not, hey, seniors, you all have to change to make things work. That's not what I'm saying. This is across all generations. We need to make sure all voices are heard. So what steps can you take to be a part of intergenerational ministry? I'm going to go over a couple quick things. Some of them are difficult, and I get that. First one is being willing to hand over aspects of the church ministry to the younger generation, helping to lead and guide them along the way. So this can be difficult, I know it, and I applaud the seniors here at Wilmont Center Church because you have supported the youth in this congregation immensely and given them the responsibility and leadership, and we are now seeing many of those youth answering the call to follow the Lord and to follow his teaching. I think even of my daughter who started on the worship team many years ago and now doing a worship degree, desiring to lead people in worship as an occupation. You know, it started by supporting the youth in leading worship down in the kids' ministry. We said we're going to intentionally build that area with the same technology we have up here so that they can train up to the point that they could come up here. And then after a little while, we invited them to come up on stage and lead on Sunday morning. The whole congregation. Those kids were terrified to get up here and lead in worship. But we said, you've got it in you. Did it go smooth all the time? Nah. Wrong note here, forgotten word here. But we didn't say, go back down and figure it out. We said, we're going to have you back next month. and then the month after that. And we said, you are a part of this ministry. And I get it. You know, sometimes on Sunday, have you ever not known one of the songs that was sung? Have you ever not known all the songs that were sung on a Sunday? My wife, she's younger than me, has come home and go, I didn't know one of those songs. I'm like, it happens, but it's okay. When I was up in Paisley, I was the chairman of the board, and we read through a book called Who Stole My Church? Great book. It's kind of a nonfiction written as a fiction, but it's really about that struggle that we go through as we see our church from our childhood or our adult days start to change into a different church than we remember and really loved and want to hold on to. And it's a wonderful book helping you walk through some of those things, because we know that the future of the church is not us. It can't be. We're not going to live to 150. Maybe not even to 120. I guess that's probably pretty rare. I don't know how long we're going to live, but the Lord does. But we're seeing churches across North America by the thousands close. They're estimating this year 15,000 churches will close their doors. And part of the reason is because we refuse to get together generationally and work together. And it's not one of those things where we just give the youth everything and we step back. You can't just give them the keys. They need mentorship. They need guidance. People with a lifetime of experience to help lead the way and ensure that Sunday mornings, above all else, are based and rooted on Scripture. And that is how, as we gather generationally, we can do that. But it does take knowing that sometimes the song that is sung, it's not for me. I could just sit and read the words or listen. I'm getting to that age. I grew up at the age of the chorus books. You know, you had the yellow and the green one in the back of the pew. And those were As the Deer, those songs. That was my generation. But I know that that's not the future generation. Things will change. Second thing I want you to do is be willing to share your story. When I was 15, I attended the Breslau Missionary Church youth group. Pastor Randall was actually the pastor at the time. It's amazing how things kind of come full circle. But one week, they took us to the long-term care home. We sat in the cafeteria there, and they brought this gentleman down, and he spoke probably for an hour, and none of us moved. It was amazing to hear his testimony and the stories of what he had been through and how God had led him along the way. 31 years later, I still remember sitting down with that gentleman and hearing his testimony. And it was amazing to hear. I don't know if many of you remember Reverend Alf Reese. So my wife and I, our first official date was to go hear Alf Reese speak. Now there's a date. I know. But he spoke that evening to a gym full of teenagers who didn't say a word the whole time, sharing his testimony and his faith in God and what it led him through. And as a youth, I sat there and thought, if he can get Alf through that, he's surely going to get me through high school. It's not that bad. But you have a story to tell. You're still here, so obviously God's got a plan for you. So be willing to share your story. Many of the troubles and trials and struggles that you had in your younger years, people today are still going through. So don't be afraid to share them. Your story can give others hope. It can give them peace. It can give them answers to their problems. Write it down maybe. Give it to your grandchildren or any youth. Talking with Mike yesterday, I said, we got to have some of you guys in to share your testimony with the youth. And I look forward to that day because I think that's going to be amazing. Your story is not history. I know my kids are reading history textbooks that have 9/11 in it. I'm like, that's not history. It just happened. But your story is not history. Your story is his story and what he's done through you. We need you to share that with the next generation. Be willing to be uncomfortable. How many of you like to be uncomfortable? How many of you are uncomfortable right now? I don't know. We got to be willing to be uncomfortable at times. You ever had a kid talking behind you in service? You just want to turn around and, hey, shh, be quiet. Or have a family have to walk past again because they got to go to the bathroom again. Or hear babies cry. Talking with Pastor Randall, honestly, when we're speaking and we hear a baby cry, it gives us joy. I would rather that child be here in this building with people that love them than anywhere else. So we got to make sure we're okay with being uncomfortable at times. Maybe the guy sitting beside you has crazy hair or tattoos. I hope that doesn't make you uncomfortable, but if it does, that's okay. I want to tell you a story. Back when I worked at Emmanuel Bible College, I used to travel around with a youth band. And we would go to youth events. They would play, I would speak, and we just had a great time serving the Lord and sharing the good news with others. Well, we got a booking one year at a church just south of Ottawa. And we were excited, so we loaded the van, we went off, and away we go. We had already talked to the convener or the organizer a couple times. So we knew everything. Here's the dates. We'll be there. So we show up, and they've advertised it as a gospel trio. Who are the gospel trio? And they said, well, is in your group a gospel trio? Our bass guitarist was 6'4", 350 pounds, with a 7-inch blue mohawk. There was no gospel trio in our van. And it was a seniors' night. Surprise! So these were young kids. It wasn't like, hey, can you guys now learn the hymnal? It was, okay, we're going to trust you, Lord. Let's do what we've planned. So we sat up and started playing. I remember I was walking through their foyer, and there was 2 older gentlemen sitting there. I invited them in. I said, guys, why don't you come on in? And the one looked at me and said, son, I can hear it just fine from here. Okay. But you know what? No one walked out. No one turned their back and said, I am not allowing a blue mohawk to lead me in worship. People stayed, and we ended up having an amazing time worshiping the Lord together, intergenerationally, blue mohawk and all. There's going to be times when we feel uncomfortable, but it is worth the effort. We need to be willing to learn. Don't believe in the myths that you hear online or hear said about the younger generations. You've taken some time to learn about their language. We know you had your own language, like cool, radical, anything like that, gnarly even. Anybody from California? Gnarly. Every generation has their sayings. And I'm not saying you have to learn them and use them, but just knowing that our generations are different gives us appreciation for one another. I heard a story of a young lady, and this breaks my heart. She attended a women's event at a church. It was an evening event. And while waiting for it to begin, she overheard some other ladies, older ladies, I won't say how old, talking about how lazy the current generation is. She was right there, and they were lumping everyone together, saying they're lazy, they're unmotivated. I wonder if they had taken the time to learn that she had been up since 5 a.m. working that day and did that every day, whether they would have thought differently if the younger generation was lazy and unmotivated. We like to lump everybody together, but we need to take the time to learn. Just because we think they're lazy and unmotivated doesn't necessarily mean they are. I'm sure the older generations may have thought that about you as well. You know, they're not out there getting their own water. Maybe you were. If you were out there getting your water, hey, thumbs up. That is not me. I have a tap. But I think every generation goes through it where the previous generation goes, we had it harder. Who had to walk to school barefoot? Anybody? I like to say that I walked to school and it was uphill both ways because it felt like it. It did. It was like 30 minutes, and didn't matter which way you went. It felt like you were going uphill. But we need to take the time to learn about the younger generations. We need to be willing to get involved. We can't just expect relationships to happen, but we need to be willing to make an effort to make it happen. Maybe this is joining a life group that's got multiple generations in it. Volunteering in a ministry or an event that will have younger people. We have a thing called Candy Carnival every year, and tons of you come out to help volunteer for that. Or we have a choir. Our choir, which is going to sing on Sunday, Easter Sunday, so come on out. They're amazing. Is so intergenerational. We got kids that are like 11 and 12, all the way up to higher ages that I won't say. But find areas where you can be in an intergenerational setting. Attend some events, bring your friends, and make a point to join with younger people. We had an event about 2 years ago, and we said, break off into groups. And I noticed one table had all youth at it, and one gentleman in his 70s. And I asked him later, I said, how did you get stuck in that group? He said, I chose that group. I said, I relate more to them to any of these older people. And it was great just to watch him interact with the youth and ask them questions. We had a lady up in Paisley. Her name was Angie. She was in her late 80s. Angie couldn't get around very much. She was very slow to get around. But we had an Awana program for kids. And part of it was they had to memorize and recite Bible verses. And Angie was one that would come every week and sit there and listen to them recite Bible verses. And then just sign and check off in their book that they had done that. My kids today still talk about Angie and how sweet and nice she was. And you might not think that meant much. Maybe Angie didn't even realize the impact she had, but she did have an impact. And then finally, be willing to support and pray for the younger generation. This past Sunday, we prayed for 3 young people who are heading overseas on missions. What a wonderful thing that we can do to support and encourage them. Some of you may say you're too old to go on missions. That's okay. But I know for a fact you're never too old to pray. You're never too old to get down. And you don't have to get down on your knees, but if you can, that's great. And maybe for some of you, it's financially supporting some of these youth as they're going overseas. But be willing to support them. You know, these kids are going through a lot of things that many of us can't even imagine. Marriages are falling apart. Families are being broken at record paces. And it's the kids and the youth that are being left behind with no one to turn to. We need you to be warriors of prayer for the next generation. That's what we need. Our generations are different, but they each have gifts that each side needs to flourish. We need each other. You know, I want to thank you this morning because I know many of you here live this out already, day to day. And I know that because I hear it from my own children after church on Sunday who said, I was talking with this person. And they just light up about what? The person that interacted with them. I know the person's 60 years older than them. But it makes their day to know that, you know what, the seniors see me, they appreciate me, they value me. So thank you already for what you are doing, because it means so much for the future generations and the future church, that if you can lead by example and pass down the knowledge and wisdom of your faith, we're going to see it continue for generation and generation. Wilmot Center Church has been right here for 185 years, and it's not going anywhere. And that's because we're going to work together generationally as one family for Christ. I'm going to call up Kaylin. She's going to sing Amazing Grace again. You're going to notice this version is going to combine kind of the old and the new just a little bit. I'm sure many of you will be fairly familiar with it as well. But it's just amazing what we can do when we work together generationally. And thank you for your time this morning. Go ahead, Kaylin.
sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow. The sun forbear to shine, but God who called me here below will be forever mine. Will be forever mine. You are forever mine.
Isn't that just a perfect example of the old and the new? And we have all come to appreciate that new song, that new version, an extension of the truth that you and I grew up knowing about. Amazing Grace, how sweet that sound. Can we say thank you to Chris and Kaylin? Wow. This has been just amazing, and I hope all of you that are watching online that you have been blessed as much as we have right here. April, next month, April the 12th, my brother Keith and his wife Bev are going to be our special guests. They're going to be leading and singing and sharing. They have been busy. Keith told me that they travel to 5 different nursing homes. I don't know how often this is, but they share in these nursing homes, and so they're going to be coming to share with us on April the 12th. They live in Wasaga Beach. We're looking forward to them coming to be with us next month, April the 12th. That's just getting so close to Good Friday and Easter. We trust you will all be able to join us for that. I realize that our responsibility definitely is to pass on to the next generation that which we have heard, that which we have received, and that which we believe will help them as well. So now, unto him who is able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before his presence with great joy, unto him be glory and power and majesty, oh, forever and ever and ever. Amen. God bless you. We'll see you next time, April the 12th, same place. Bye-bye.